I'm Gary DeMar, and I'm going to be dealing with the topic of eschatology as it relates to apologetics. Apologetics is the Christian discipline of defending the Christian faith against unbelieving thought or just questions related to Christianity. We're all involved in apologetics to a certain degree. So it's not unusual to find yourself involved in trying to deal with non-Christians and even some Christians who have questions regarding the Christian faith. And this is apologetics. The word is a biblical word. It's used in the book of Acts. The Apostle Peter says that we should always be ready to give a defense to anyone who asks us questions related to the Christian faith. The issue of eschatology is necessary because the Bible says that somebody who makes a prediction about the end, and that end does not come as prescribed, or makes a prophecy about a particular event, and that event doesn't take place as it was predicted, that person is a false prophet. If the Bible makes a prediction about something, and that prediction doesn't come to pass as it was predicted, then we have a way of saying, well, but the Bible isn't reliable. And if Jesus makes a prediction about some future event and it doesn't come about as he prophesied, then we in reality can question the reliability of Jesus's witness. And if he's wrong about one thing, then it's possible that he could be wrong about other things. So the entire Bible is jeopardized by someone who comes along and says, Jesus said particular things about prophetic events, and they did not come to pass as he said. We have the Olivet Discourse, Matthew chapter 24, Mark 13, Luke 21, where Jesus makes specific pronouncements about what was going to happen before that particular generation passed away. And the question is, did those things come to pass as he said? And if they didn't come to pass as he said, that makes Jesus a false prophet. And for many years, Christians have tried to kind of get around the literal meaning of certain words that Jesus uses. For example, Matthew chapter 24, verse 34 says, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. Well, did all those things take place? And a lot of people say, well, no. I mean, the sun, moon, and stars language of Matthew 24, 29, the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven, wars and rumors of wars, the gospel being preached in the whole world. Now, I deal with all of these questions in several books that I've written. One is Jesus Coming Soon? Last Days Madness, and the one that is particularly established for a interpretive analysis of Matthew chapter 24, actually starting with Matthew chapter 23 and going through Matthew 24 verses 1 through 34, Wars and Rumors of Wars. I cover all of these in great detail. So I'm not going to rehearse all of these particular claims. What I wanted to do is to deal with an article that I read when I was doing some research. Came across an article on a website called Black Unbelievers Incorporated. It's run by an atheist woman, and she had this particular article titled Jesus's Failed Prophecy About His Return. And I read it and I thought, this is actually a good article. It's in this respect. It deals with dispensational premillennialism, although the author never mentions dispensational premillennialism. But it deals with passages that dispensational premillennialists claim have not been fulfilled, even though those passages indicate by time indicators, like Matthew chapter 24, verse 34, where Jesus says, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. And time words like near, shortly, and quickly. The author does a very good job of saying, look, these words seem to mean just what they state. This generation, when used throughout the New Testament, refers to the generation to whom Jesus is speaking. The time words near, shortly, and quickly mean what they seem to mean in our daily usage of those words and throughout the New Testament. I've made this case over and over again, and other people who hold the same eschatological position that I do also hold that position. This generation refers to the generation to whom Jesus is speaking. Time words like near, shortly, and quickly mean near, shortly, and quickly. Dispensationalists are kind of stretch the truth of a passage. For example, let's take Matthew chapter 24, verse 34, where it says, "This generation will not pass away until all these things take place." Every time this generation is used in the Gospels, it always refers to the generation to whom Jesus is speaking. You can see this in Matthew chapter 12. You can see it in Matthew chapter 23. And in the case of verse 34 of Matthew 24, it's there as well. And the near demonstrative "this" is used. And you can do this on your own. Do your own study on this. Follow the use of the word "this," and it refers to something that's near. If you wanted to describe something that was in the distant future, you would use the word "that," a far demonstrative. Every time "this generation" is used, it always means the generation to whom Jesus is speaking. Others will say, well, it's this type of generation that will not pass away until all these things take place. Well, it doesn't use the word type. You can't just start inserting words to a text and then say this is what it really means. Dispensationalists will try to manipulate the definition of Greek words, like in Matthew chapter 24, verse 34, we come across the Greek word "genia." Now, the first time "genia" appears in Matthew's gospel, it's found in Matthew chapter 1, verse 17, and it's used 3 times, and it refers to 14 generations 3 times, and as a result, you've got 42 generations. Now, if you try to make "genia" mean race, you have a real problem on your hands, because then you would have to say Matthew chapter 1, verse 17, that there are actually 42 races. It just makes no sense. The Greek word "genia" means generation. It does not mean race. And if it did mean race, then the problem you have is that the Jewish race will one day pass away when all these things mentioned in Matthew chapter 24, verse 34 take place. The Jewish race will not pass away until all these things take place. That's how you would have to read the passage. It makes absolutely no sense. Some will say, well, what this really means is the generation that sees these signs will not pass away until all these things take place. The problem there, however, is you have to take away the word "this," add the word "that," and then add "that sees these signs." Again, you're taking away a word and adding words in order to get a passage mean what you need it to mean. And a further problem with this is in verse 33 of Matthew 24, Jesus is very clear. It's that particular generation that will see all these signs. That's why you see the second person plural, "you," used throughout Matthew's gospel in Matthew 24, and also in Matthew chapter 24, you'll see second person plural used extensively. It's obvious that Jesus had that particular generation in mind. So this article, Jesus' failed prophecy about his return, is very good in pointing out some of the problems related to this particular topic. What the author of this article fails to do is to deal with the preterist interpretation of Bible prophecy. It's as if the preterist interpretation of Bible prophecy doesn't exist. So on that alone, this article fails to deal adequately with the claim that the Bible is in error and Jesus is in error, and as a result, the Bible isn't authoritative, and therefore you might as well become an atheist. I'll continue this topic in the next session on eschatology and apologetics.